So let's get to the gist of your column in the Star Tribune a couple of days ago, Brandon. The headline on it says, "Leave alleged former Nazi alone." And when I read that, I went, huh? What? But you build a case throughout your column that says, don't bother this guy. He's an old man. Why are we going to pursue this? Lay out your case, Brandon, for why we shouldn't be pursuing justice against Michael Karkoc.
Well, yeah, the Strib did a nice job of putting a nice headline on it. I have to admit that wasn't my title. If you read a lot of the comments online, whether it's on the Star Tribune or any other news site, at least in the Twin Cities here, there were a lot of people that had the sentiment of, hey, leave the guy alone. And I addressed that in my piece. I said, there's a lot of people saying this. He's old. He's obviously not a threat. And to those that still demand justice, even though he's not a threat, they probably look at those people as being unprincipled. But I took it a step further and I said, well, what are you exactly asking for in your justice? What is your definition of justice? And what I tried to boil it down to was, in some way, shape, or form, you want this guy to be punished. You want him to pay. And I wrote the piece because I think it did. I wanted to bring up the bigger question of our justice system, not just as defined in the U.S., but as defined probably worldwide, where there's not a lot of talk about restoration, and there's more talk about how we can get someone back, how we can make them pay a punitive. And I don't think that's justice. To me, justice is about restoration. If somebody steals, they must pay it back. Maybe with interest if it's over a while, or if it's over a long period of time. If somebody vandalizes, they have to clean it up. If somebody harms you, they have to pay your medical bills, that kind of thing. These are obviously minor examples compared to what he's being accused of, which I believe is killing civilians in large numbers. But I just have a hard time seeing the benefit of adding more, negativity, harm, pain, suffering to an already bad situation. And we always call that justice, but, in this case, it would be locking him up for the rest of his life. And, okay, that's obviously going to cost, a lot of taxpayers' money. Now, do we want to pay to see this guy sit in a cell the rest of his life? What's the point of that? What are we getting out of that? I just want people to answer those questions, and I don't see a lot of reason for that. I see reason for him trying to, if he did it, him trying to make up for what he did, which, again, how can one do that? But they certainly can do more outside of jail than inside of jail. To me, jails are used for protection from society, to protect threatening people from society. And if there's no threat, then I don't like paying tax dollars because I want to see or someone else wants to see someone sit in jail and suffer. I don't like that. That to me isn't justice at all. That's revenge.
So how would you explain this then, and this question was coming, how would you explain this then to the families of those who were allegedly murdered by Mr. Karkoc in World War II, and how would you explain it to people who lost family members or survived the Holocaust in World War II? When they come at you and say, we want our pound of flesh, this man is allegedly a monster, this man killed women and children, this man was part of one of the greatest exterminations of human beings in world history, they want their pound of flesh, and that's good enough for them. How do you explain your stance to them, Brandon?
Well, I think I would too. I don't know how I would react. I'm sure some people of Jewish descent, have forgiven the people who've killed their ancestors. But then I'm sure, like you said, there's a lot of people who demand justice, revenge, whatever you want to call it. I know this isn't popular, but I don't think we should appease the vengeful side of people, the vengeful side of mankind in our justice system. I might want someone to be dead. I might want someone to really suffer extraordinary things if they killed my mother. But I don't want my justice system to appease that urge. Now, there's actually a really interesting argument to be made that, look, if we don't appease that urge, then we'll have vigilantes out there getting justice. Then they'll be getting revenge on their own. So the justice system will put this guy in prison. Oh, okay, well, I'll take care of him then. Now that's an interesting angle, because then jail is used to protect the offender from the public. And if you think of it that way, then you wonder, boy, what kind of world do we live in where the jails aren't used just to put dangerous people away? They're used to protect offenders from the public, who might just take matters in their own hands. And you know what? That's an interesting point, and that might be a valid one. I mean, we've had a history in this country of mob justice, lynchings and so forth. So that's an interesting case. I would hate to face the truth that's the biggest reason and the largest factor in this conversation, and that's why we need jail. I don't think that's a factor here. I don't think we have to worry about anyone going after him. If we left him be, so
let me ask Brandon. Let me ask you this. And our guest is Brandon Ferdig. He's a writer from Minneapolis who penned a piece in the Star Tribune a couple of days ago. I would suggest going online to startribune.com and reading it for yourself and drawing your own conclusions. Is your opposition to justice as it is defined in today's world against Mr. Karkoc based solely on the fact that he's old, that he's 94 years old, and that he's really not a threat to society? Because were you opposed then, playing the theoretical game, to what happened at the Nuremberg trials, where many Nazis were found guilty of atrocities and war crimes and were executed? Because to me, that was a just outcome for their monstrous crimes and their nature. They could not have been rehabilitated, in my opinion. They were the definition of evil on this planet, and to me, death was too good for what happened to the gentleman at the Nuremberg trials. Do you feel that if Mr. Karkoc would have been one of those people, been killed in 1946 or whatever the heck it was, would you feel the same way? Is your opinion based solely on his age?
No. I feel for the Nuremberg, those guilty of Nuremberg, that if what you say is true, and there's no chance, and I'm just going to agree with that. There's no chance for rehabilitation. Then I think life in prison is appropriate. I don't advocate the death penalty under any circumstance.
Okay. But then, as a taxpayer, you're willing to foot the bill for them being in prison for a long, long time, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I don't think it's right to kill people. I mean, maybe it's simplistic, but that's how I feel. And if someone is a threat, we're not going to end their life. We'll protect people from them. We'll somehow help them be useful to society in some way. Now, some people don't even want prisoners to be useful to society in any way. They don't want them to profit from books they write and things like that. And I've heard those sorts of movements before, and I think that's too bad. But now that's a good question. If Karkoc was chosen, then it all comes down to whether someone is a threat or not, as to whether I think they should be in prison. And if he in fact did a lot of the activities that he's charged with or alleged, then I suppose then I would have advocated him to be in jail at the time, and in jail to this day.
But in this case, since Mr. Karkoc is 94 years old, if what happens to him is what you advocate, which is leave him alone, he's not a threat, he's 94 years old, that means that he got away with murder. He got away with multiple murders, he got away with multiple atrocities, and he will pay no price, none. And that to me is, I understand that, fine, he's an old man now, fine, he came here, he escaped to Northeast Minneapolis, he lied, he did all these things, maybe he's been a great neighbor and a great PTA member, but the bottom line is if the allegations are true, he's a mass murderer. And I don't think justice in no way would be served by him paying no penalty whatsoever, saying, you're old.
Well, I guess I would ask where that desire in you comes from to want him to pay something. He got away with it. I don't really...
Because he murdered hundreds of people. He murdered hundreds of civilians women and children, and there has to be some price paid. And if it's strictly out of bloodlust and strictly out of revenge, I guess in my case, then so be it. I don't think that you can allow somebody to say, well, you know what, he ran away, he's okay, he's really old, he's just a nice old man. I don't think that's a fair way to look at it, and it's certainly, I think, Brandon, is a slap in the face to his victims and and their families.
Yeah, that's another point I bring up in the piece. And again, I'm not against actually him going to trial. Now, that's obviously what the piece says, is that just leave him alone. In theory, I'm not against him going to trial, but if he's found guilty, they're going to put him away forever, and I just think that's pointless.
Okay.
Now, if the sentence was, you're guilty, and so we're going to require you to give your estate away to victims of Holocaust survival, or some sort of Holocaust survival fund, then I think we're talking more about restoring and making whole rather than adding more harm to a terrible situation. It's just the kind of simple eye for an eye thing. It's just a lot of families were destroyed, and so I think ruining his family would only add one more ruined family to the whole situation, and I don't think that's any part of the solution. I think if you require him to, use the remaining years of his life to, I don't know, in some way act to try to make whole for what he did, give his estate away to, like I said, some sort of fund for Holocaust survivors or something. Let's talk restorative here, and let's not talk punitive, because I don't think anything really good comes out of it. The slap in the face of the victim part, I also addressed in the article, and we have this idea that if the perpetrator isn't severely punished or punished at all, then we think the victims of the crime aren't validated, that we've just said they're worthless or something like that. And this has come up now with the Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman deal. George Zimmerman, of course, being tried, presently for murder of Trayvon Martin down in Florida. And it's set up in a similar way where if Zimmerman is found innocent, then people will think Trayvon Martin's death was in vain, that, it's a slap in the face of Trayvon Martin. But I contend, hey, Trayvon Martin was who he was, a great young man. I don't know the man, obviously, but I'll assume he's a great young man. He's a great young man regardless of what happens to his killer, or whatever.
Yeah, okay, I got you.
The person who...
I got you.
It's like the people who were killed in the Holocaust, they're not validated by what happened to their offender. That's erroneous, and I think people... I think that's a break we should make, because then it creates this need for guilt. And also, another factor in this case is that we've got this real us versus them mentality. And so we've got anyone who was affected by the Holocaust looking at this guy in Northeast Minneapolis as the face of the enemy, suddenly. Okay. And you get this us versus them thing, and as long as we can get him, as long as he can pay the price, as long as George Zimmerman can pay the price down in Florida, then that will validate something about racism in America or anti-Semitism across the world.
Brandon, I need to cut you off because I'm up against a break here. Thank you very much for your time. Interesting conversation, interesting concepts you have. I disagree with you, but it's an interesting conversation to have. So thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Sure thing.